وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. Praise be to God, and I bear witness that there's only one God, Allah. Looks like the rain is delaying a number of people, so I'm going to start with the less important subjects and keep the important subjects to the second khutbah. In this khutbah, I want to talk about the subject for the Muslim perspective that we will be preparing, inshallah, in the next few days. One important subject is, I don't know if it's a new idea, but it's an idea called universal unity. And I'm abbreviating it U and U, universal unity, through devotion to God alone. The idea is that the Protestants are fighting the Catholics in Ireland, the Jews are fighting the Muslims in the Middle East, the Hindus are fighting the Sikhs in India, the Sunnis and Shias are fighting each other in Iran and Iraq. And there is one thing in common among all those people: the Protestants, the Catholics, the Hindus, the Sikhs, the Muslims, the Sunnis, the Shias. This one common bond is belief in God. They all believe in God. So it dawned on me that if we rise above the human factors, if the human race rises above the human factors, such as Jesus, Mary, Muhammad, the saints, and so on, they will be united. There will be no reason to be different. The reason the Sunnis are fighting the Shias is because they reverence different imams, human factors. The reason the Protestants are fighting the Catholics is Martin Luther, a human factor. The reason the Mormons are Mormons is Joseph Smith, and so on. So it is these human factors, Muhammad, Jesus, Mary, Joseph Smith, and so on, that cause the differences. If we focus on the one common linkage, that is belief in God, we will have one objective to love, one objective to worship, one and the same. So this is why I called it universal unity. I finished a video program a couple of days ago. The shooting of it. I'll be editing it in the next 2 weeks, and inshallah we'll be showing it in Washington, D.C., in New York, Boston, Cincinnati, San Francisco, Los Angeles, the major centers. And Chicago, we got Chicago also. So the program will emphasize these points of differences and the one point of unity, and I will be asking them to get together with us in promoting universal unity. The complete name is Universal Unity Through Devotion to God Alone. And by the way, we're going to change this sign out there. While studying this subject, I realized that you can submit to somebody while hating his guts. So submission is not really a good word. Devotion is a positive word. So we're going to change the sign and make it happiness is devotion to God alone. This is a product of this universal unity idea. This is one subject. And I'm going to put this in the Muslim perspective, on the back page. On the front page, I'm going to talk about polygamy, which is a very popular subject. I had a call from New York, Sayyida Ahmed, most of you know her, and they're having a big problem with New York Muslims abusing the law, God's law, polygamy. So I want to start off by saying that we have laws, divine laws in the Quran. Polygamy is one of them. It is God's law. It is allowed. But I want to say that when we abuse God's law, any of God's laws, the retribution is really not worth it. The retribution is severe. We can't cheat ourselves and justify things for ourselves. But when we look at the subject of polygamy, our example is the Prophet Muhammad. Sometimes they accuse us that we do not follow the example of the Prophet, and this is a lie. But our example here, a perfect example, is the Prophet Muhammad. He had one wife until she died. For 25 years, he had one wife. All his youth, from the age of 25 to 50. He had only one wife. He had all his children from her, except one. And after Khadija died, he married widows of his friends who had children to give them his name. He had a couple of political marriages that were actually forced on him. Abu Bakr told him, you have to marry my daughter, you must marry my daughter. So he married Aisha. And they lie, they say that he married Aisha when she was 9. Well, even now, when a girl is born in a family, they name her husband to be. When she's still 9 hours old. She's going to marry, some cousin. So this is happening now, and this is what happened with Aisha, but he did not marry her until she was a mature woman. That was a political marriage. Another political marriage was his friend Omar, who told him, you've got to marry my daughter, Hafsa, also. But his marriages, after Khadija died, were all to alleviate sorrow. So here is an important criterion for polygamy, is that you alleviate sorrow, you do not create sorrow. I'm going to put this in that perspective. So somebody who wants to use this law has to be very careful not to abuse it. And he has to use this criterion. Am I creating sorrow or alleviating sorrow? Will there be creation of pain or removal of pain? This is one thing. Am I driven by lust or am I driven by charitable feelings? We are very special people. We are people who decided to worship God alone and follow His laws. And we have to be the harshest on ourselves. So I'm going to write this on the front page of the Muslim Perspective. I think these are all the criteria I could think of, but I think we don't need to say any more once we think of the example of the Prophet, especially that he was living in a society where polygamy was a way of life. And every man had 20, 30 wives, 200 wives, depending on how rich he was. It was a way of life in the society. Where in this society, it is not a way of life. It is even illegal, according to the laws of this country. But the law is being abused everywhere. I hear examples from everywhere in the country by Muslims. And they're paying dearly because abusing God's law. When you become a Muslim, you know better. When you know better, the responsibility is multiplied many-fold, and the retribution is really severe. It's not worth it. Tubu ilallah, repent. الحمد لله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. The important subject I want to talk about in this khutbah is I was reading the Bible, preparing this book about Jesus, and in one place Jesus tells the people, your problem is that you do not know God. And this happens to be the problem right now. People do not know God. So I'm going to review with you some scientific facts that you already know. Because if we know God, we will understand why every page of the Quran says God alone, worship God alone. And we'll understand the blasphemy of putting human creatures anywhere near God.